All right, let's see. Robert.
Well, hello there. First timer
Hey.
here. Incidentally, you don't have to read off the super chats I put. I was just testing out. You can't type gun and have it going as a super chat, even though it works in the regular chat. So
Really?
I tried that with God because you said G-N, and I right
Yeah,
away I
and I
thought, well,
reminded you.
observant Jews will write G-D.
Yeah,
We don't
yeah.
want to use the name of God in vain.
No, we can't mention the name of God.
Yeah, heaven forbid. So
So you can't write gun in super chat.
no, you can't write gun, and it's a bit of a game when you get a super chat. It won't take to figure out what word didn't they like because there's a
Yeah.
whole bunch of them. They
Wow.
will you put them in for free, but they won't let you put money on it. Which to me it should be the opposite way. If I'm going to put money on it, you think they'd give me more leeway? Strange algorithms.
Yes.
And I
YouTube.
usually don't have any questions, as you know. Most of my super chats are frivolous or trivial. But the earlier discussion, I thought, well, Israel requires a wall. I know folks like Scott are in the chat and they're going to say that's why the US needs a wall. No,
Yeah.
Israel is at war. Israel has been at war for the last 70 years. They need walls. Here's a question for you though. If could you use a similar logic to say they need conscription?
Yeah. No, and I'd actually say they don't need walls. I don't like the walls in Israel. I don't believe in the walls in Israel. I've said this over and over time. And look, the Gaza wall just failed big time. It was breached in 27 different places and caught everybody by surprise. And they had not just a wall, but they had, I mean, a fence, but they had the best electronic surveillance equipment in the world. They were surveying this, they were monitoring it, and it still failed. So no, walls are signs of failure. Walls are signs of defeat. You build a wall when you've given up. What Israel needs to do is crush its enemies. What Israel needs to do is bring them to their knees. And if they do that, you don't need a wall. They'll be so terrified of ever engaging with you, they'll never will. So no, I don't think Israel needs a wall in any of its borders. I never have. Every time I drive by the fence in the West Bank with the West Bank, I hate it. I think it's horrible. It's visually horrible, but it's also it represents defeat. It represents giving up self-defense. And I think the same thing about conscription. I've said many times about Israel, generally about conscription. A country that cannot raise a volunteer army to defend itself doesn't deserve to exist. And Israel, I think, would be able to raise a large volunteer army because I think people love Israel, love the country they live in. They recognize the relative freedom that they have there, and they recognize it's under threat. And if they don't fight, it'll all be gone, and that they are fighting for themselves and for their families and for their lives. So I do think Israel should shift to a volunteer army. And I don't think it would take a big hit in terms of the size of the army, particularly after events like what we saw October 7th.
In that spirit, then, do you think there's less resentment in Israel for conscription? I noticed they don't have, on college campuses burning their draft cards and
Yeah,
they
there's a lot less resentment of it. There's a lot more acceptance of it. It's also part of Israeli culture. It's part of, you go at 18, you join the army. It's part of what you do. It's almost like college in the US. You meet new people. You get to know people from very different backgrounds than you. For really smart kids, it's an opportunity to get into tech and work in intelligence and do things like that. So it's just part of a culture. There's very little resentment of it. But there is a movement to move to a volunteer army, led by objectivists actually in Israel. So one of the things the objectivists are known for in Israel is for being big advocates for a volunteer army in Israel.
excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.